The safest states to live if you are LGBTQ+. This is the focus group.
They're all business, except when they're not. It's the focus group with Tim Bennett and John Nash.
Welcome to the focus group. John Nash here with my good friend and co-host, Mr. Tim Bennett. Find us on Wednesdays at Facebook Live or YouTube. And of course, focusgroupradio.com is where you'll find out all about us, the show, and all our media is there as well, including TFG Unbuttoned, our Tuesday podcast, which we would love to have you subscribe, like, and rate to. 3 quick stories, usually a little more political than we get here on the focus group. So that might be a fun turn of events for you folks. All right, welcome to the new week. Pride is officially over. Tim said on TFG Unbuttoned this week that he thinks the Pride Leprechaun needs a name.
Yeah, happy.
Do you happen to remember the name of the leprechaun from Lucky Charms? Was he just Lucky? Was he Lucky, the Lucky Charms leprechaun? You remember him? Well, Hearts and moons and stars and clovers.
I'm sure you probably had a name, right?
Yeah. All right, so this week, I'm going to kick off with a quick little thing. I sent a note to Tim this week, and after he read it, he said, go out and buy a lottery ticket because that never happens. So I have AirPod Pros, and I also have regular AirPods, but the AirPod Pros I love because of the sound canceling capabilities, or the noise canceling, I should say. One of them just started to act funny. If I tilted my head right, music would stop, or the it would claim both were not in my ears and both were in my ears. So finally, I think I'm going to make a Genius Bar, appointment and go to Apple. Tim has done this on the phone. He's lost. I remember, didn't you lose an iPod down the toilet one time and it flushed out?
Fell out of my ear. I watched it go down the sewer.
On your Find My Mac app or whatever. So I go to the Apple store at Grand Central Station. By the way, if you're a New Yorker, that is one of the nicest stores. It's big. It's bigger than you suspect. And you're in Grand Central Terminal. It's like the coolest place to have an Apple store. So I go, I meet quickly with a customer service rep. I think his name was Danny. Starts tapping stuff in. I tell him what's going on. Then he says, so you hear crackling in that one iPod Pro? And I'm like, no, not crackling. It's just not working properly. And when I do things, it doesn't work. So you hear audio issues. You hear audio crackling. Finally, he kind of lowers his voice and he says, look, you need to have an audio diagnostic done on your AirPods. And I said, why? He goes, tell you why. He goes, 19 out of 20 times when I do this for a customer, their AirPods are replaced for free, because the AirPods will fail the audio diagnostic. I sign something, I drop them off. They'll be ready in an hour. I said, I'll come back tomorrow. Hour and a half later, hour and 20, I get a note, your Apple product is ready for pickup at the store. Now, I wasn't sure what I was walking into. The next day I go in. They're kind of eerie when you check in. When you get to the place you're going, they know who you are already because you've checked in. And, oh, hello, John, we have your replacement AirPods. Guy hands me 2 brand new ones, same old battery case. And he said both units failed the audio test. He said, so we're replacing these for you. I'm like, well, thank you. Now when I wear them, they sound very different than the last pair. And now I wonder how long the other pair wasn't working properly before I decided to have it fixed.
Are these the old ones?
These are the
little ones or the big ones?
The big ones.
Because I noticed mine, it feels like one of them doesn't seem to work in one ear.
That's what happened with me. That was definitely what happened with me. And now they sound great, and when you have them on transparency, they're called, so they're picking up the outside world. It sounds way better than the other pair, or the original pair did before this replacement. So I sent him a note, and I said, just got back from Apple, and he says, buy a lottery ticket, because that never happens.
No, Apple wouldn't give you a Band-Aid if you were bleeding in the store. I mean, I can't imagine you got a free AirPod. I mean, how many times have you complained about, something with Apple that doesn't work? It's called tough shit. You go in there, you can buy something and never open it, and they won't return
it. Well, Tim, you have sometimes you have a hate with Apple. Sometimes you have a love-hate. I don't know if you have a love.
But if you bought like a tracking pad, or say you bought one of those tracking pads, or say you bought a mouse.
Yeah, you didn't use it.
A wireless mouse, and then somebody gave you one as a gift 2 days later, and you didn't open the mouse and you brought it back. Then I want to take it back. I don't need it. I didn't open it.
If there's an Apple store in the square mile where you're at, that could be something the commissioner might want to tackle. Mr. Commissioner.
Listen, you know what I'm saying.
I do.
You know it's true.
I do.
That Apple. It's they've
Problematic.
got it down. They decided they're the opposite of LL Bean or Neiman Marcus. The customer's always wrong, and they'll never take it back.
Customers.
You buy it, you own it.
I've
That's
not
it.
quite had that experience. A couple years ago, I had an iPhone 6S, which I was one of my favorite iPhones, and it just started to not hold a charge. I took it in. The guy says, "Oh, by the way, this serial number, you are due for a replacement battery because it's part of a unit of a series of numbers that we corralled, and they're problematic." Comes back 10 minutes later with a brand new phone. I mean, I guess it was brand new or
I
refurbished.
think you're chipped. You're probably Apple chipped. You were one of the original Apple files. You're probably chipped.
Do you mean
go
like
in there.
they see me coming and they're like, okay.
Yeah, here he comes. He's an Apple. You could be working at the Genius Bar. You should do that part time. Give you something to do. Work at a Genius Bar.
I actually thought about it. And when the guy was tapping in my particulars, I said, boy, Apple has really sophisticated diagnostic because it's all their own diagnostic stuff because it's obviously all their own material. I should have asked him what that was like, but I don't know if I would be able to be patient enough with the general public. So I came in and I had very specific problems that I had already troubleshot, and I had done all the things that Apple recommend. I went through that with him, and halfway through, he waves his hand. He goes, "Clearly, you know what you're talking about. You've checked this out. We're going to go to the next step. We're going to do audio diagnostics." So I don't know that I would have the utter patience to deal with people, maybe not.
No, you don't. You don't
Okay,
have the
so
patience, I don't think.
there goes the Genius Bar job, right?
But it might be good for you if you could say you only want to deal with a certain level of customer. When I worked at Subaru, I actually worked at a car dealership one night a week in Chicago because I wanted to see what it was like to sell cars.
Wow.
And so I worked at a dealership in the suburbs, which I would take the customers as they came in and I would talk to them. I would get them all the way up until the point of doing the financial contracts and so forth, and then I would hand it over to a actual salesperson to do the deal. It was great for the salespeople because they didn't have to do anything. I did all the selling, and then they just made the commission and made the deal. But I wanted to do it because I wanted to see what it was like to actually sell a car and see.
Did you like it? Did you have fun doing it?
I did because for me, it wasn't my livelihood.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think I was a little more
relaxed
about it. I remember they had an SVX. Remember that car? It was like you landed from the moon, the window within a window.
Sports,
and they had this car forever on the lot. And I sold it, and they couldn't believe it. They thought it was a joke. It's the first car I sold, which was an impossible car to sell. I mean, you couldn't give these cars away. And I sold it to a woman who was a teacher, and the reason she wanted it was because they had some goofy control on the seat. That she was a piano teacher, and she liked the fact that the electric seat could go all the way up and she could sit at a 90-degree angle. That's why she bought the car.
It reminds me of something you and I encountered on focus groups years ago when we were working at Subaru. I was working for Subaru. You were the director of marketing. And we were a consumer in research indicated that they had test driven the car but had not bought it. And I was flabbergasted. And I said to the president at the time, Fred, I'm so sorry about this. And he just shook his head in complete, like if it was nothing. He said, look, you got them to the lot, but once they're there, they might not like the instrument panel. They might not like where the window button is. And it could be something as simple as a door lock, or the seat goes up to 90, right?
Yeah, it's not comfortable. Yeah, could be any of those things.
So that's the interesting thing about cars. I remember now that you've mentioned this story again. I do remember you told me that SVX story. Anyway, moving right along here. Oh, folks, as I teased at the beginning of the show, we are going to be doing in our back half in Shop Talk a look at states that are safest for the LGBTQ plus population. It's an interesting article. And before that, though, we're going to have caught our eye. In this segment, we're going to look at Carl Nassib, who just came out at the NFL. And then after our break, we have Business Birthday and the Shop Talk that I just mentioned. So without further ado, Mr. Bennett, what caught your eye?
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
So I have two quick stories this week. The first one that I saw, I thought was, it caught my eye because I sort of had a guess, but I really didn't have a guess. So I'm curious as to which you would say. So the headline is, what's the least common birthday in the United States?
I want to say Christmas Day or New Year's Day. Okay,
so there is a reason why you would have picked either of those?
Because a lot of people are unhappy if they have those birthdays.
So what?
I know the logic doesn't even hold a drop of water, but whatever.
That's funny that you would say that. So you would pick that because, well, people are unhappy.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, now I would have thought you would have picked another day. No, it is a famous day.
It is a famous day.
So you did pick. So what were yours again? Let me say.
New Year's,
picked
New Year's Day,
New Year's or
and
Christmas.
Christmas,
right?
yeah.
Okay, so one of okay, so then the other option would have been February 29th, right? Leap year, right?
Okay.
So it
That's
only
a
happens once
strange
every
4 years.
years.
That's a strange birthday to have, right?
Right. But that's not the one. Actually, you did pick one of them.
New Year's
So
Day.
it's either New Year's or Christmas. Which one do you think it is?
All right, I decided to go. I'll go with New Year's now.
Okay. You picked the wrong one.
Oh, it was Christmas Day?
It's Christmas, but it's Christmas for an odd reason. And so they said that the reason it's Christmas is because most babies now, doctors generally, I didn't realize this. They said that Christmas is the least common birthday in the United States now, and it has been since 1970. They did a census. They collected birth dates or birth information from 1973 to date. And of course, this is, money well spent at Harvard. They wanted to know what the most common birthdays were, least common birthdays, and they decided, or they found out it was December 25th. And then they wanted to figure out why. Any reason why you think it was December 25th?
I'm going back because you have to go back 9 months, right? There's something about the conception date that somehow matches up with this. I'm probably wrong, though.
No, it's not the conception date. It's about the birth.
Do they not record something if it's, stop hemming and hawing. Give us the answer.
No, so I was just wondering if you might have known. I didn't know this about birth. So they said that now in the United States, a third of the babies, so 33%, are now born by cesarean section. So doctors don't usually schedule them on
Christmas
holidays.
Day. In other words,
Which Christmas would be.
If your due date's within 2 or 3 days, you would skip the holiday, right?
You
Oh
skip
my
Christmas.
God. I would never have guessed this, by the way. I would not have guessed this.
I wouldn't have either, because I did the same thing you did. I said, "Oh, Christmas, when would that be?" And I'm trying to go back 9 months. What would that be? Which is impossible to figure out. Like there would be no rhyme or reason to that. Why would Christmas be any different than, the baby doesn't decide, oh, today's the 25th, I'm coming out. So, but they said it's because a third of the babies now are born by cesarean section, and doctors will not schedule usually cesarean sections either on public holidays or weekends. And so Christmas
Day is the
least
least common birthday.
Least common birthday in the United States.
Good one. I like this one. Okay.
The other one has to do with the event, and I laughed at this one a little bit, and this really has to do with probably more so New York City or some very, very common, or I shouldn't say common, I would say more Northeast or more big city private clubs or very, very high-end restaurants. So since the event has happened, a lot of restaurants that would require a very strict dress code, particularly jackets for men, and they talk about a number of restaurants, La Bernardine in New York, some other very, very private exclusive clubs in Manhattan. They talk about how men could not come in unless they had come in for dinner, unless they wore a jacket. And I remember as a young recent college graduate going to my friend Scott with his parents to their country club, and I didn't have a sport coat with me, and they purposely put me in some like polyester clown plaid sport coat.
The spare sport coat. That's what
right,
that
and
is.
Scott said they always do that on purpose to embarrass you, just to make sure that next time you bring a sport coat. But they said that they've eliminated this at a lot of places now. They said so. This no jacket required policy, and they're not making you wear one of the ones in the closet because people feel they're unsanitary. So when you used to borrow one, like, oh my God, I forgot a jacket, so they don't even make you wear one of the ones that they have on hold. So they said that a lot of places now are eliminating this jacket requirement, and they said this is one of the casualties or one of the benefits of what's happened since the event. So what do you think about the no jacket required rule?
I'm cool with that.
Are you?
Yeah, because it's been the norm now that business casual, which is usually a nice dress shirt and slacks, far outweighs this needing to wear a sport coat anywhere. And now that everybody's working from home, it's like, why? I don't mind wearing a jacket. I like wearing a sports coat. But I think it's a smart idea. And I think they have to address that as the restaurant industry tries to recover from the event. All right. So,
You know why? I like taking them I like wearing it for one reason.
pockets,
You're exactly right.
Yeah,
because
pockets.
I never know what to do with my phone and
keys,
the wallet. It's too
business
bulky in the
cards.
pants.
It's everything. Business cards left, wallet goes in this pocket. Yeah, I totally agree. When I went to that premiere in Tribeca for the film I'm in, briefly, I wore a sport coat.
For the film I'm in.
Briefly. It said briefly. All right, so what caught my eye is something very different. I think you'll appreciate this one, though, and it's about the origin of wheeled luggage, the mystery of wheelie suitcase, how gender stereotypes held back the history of invention. So you think about the wheeled suitcase, right? So here's the history of it. In 1972, an American luggage executive unscrewed 4 casters from a wardrobe and fixed them to a suitcase. Then he put a strap on this contraption and trotted it gleefully around the house. This was a man named Bernard Sadow, S-A-D-O-W, Sadow. Invented the world's first rolling. It happened nearly 5,000 years after the invention of the wheel and barely 1 year after NASA managed to put 2 men on the surface of the moon now. So this is 1972. But that never took off. So think about it. We had wheeled luggage in 1972, technically. Right. So a lot of people have looked at this. Nobel-winning economist Robert Shiller sees it as a blindingly obvious problem of innovation where sometimes things stare you in the face and it just doesn't happen. And sort of same with Nassim Nicholas Taleb, another intellectual who says sometimes humans try to over-engineer things, so maybe the wheels on the suitcase didn't make a lot of sense. But a woman who wrote this article thinks the answer is far more obvious and gender-based. She found a photo in a newspaper archive of a woman in a fur coat. People treat you different when you wear fur, Tim. Pulling a suitcase on wheels, and it made her stop in her tracks because the picture was from 1952, 20 years before the official invention of the rolling suitcase. So now she has a different story. She thinks that the resistance to the rolling suitcase is gender-based. And even though he is the official inventor, Sadow, described how difficult it was to get any U.S. department store to carry it. At the time, there was this macho feeling. Men used to carry luggage for their wives. It was the natural thing to do. So she says that 2 assumptions about gender were at work here. The first was that no man would ever roll a suitcase because it was simply unmanly. And the second was about the mobility of women. Women usually didn't travel by themselves. They had a man with them who would carry their bags. I could go further, but one final example here of the gender issue is if anybody remembers the movie with Kathleen Turner and Michael Douglas, Romancing the Stone in 1984, she has a rolling bag with her when she crashes, and it becomes the running joke of the movie because it's such a pain in the ass. It's the rolling bag. But basically, this author sees this as a gender issue, and I got to tell you something. I read this, and I laughed because I raised my hand, and I'll say, I'm one of those people who felt that you should carry your bag through the airport. There's no rhyme or reason to this. Are you in the same camp or?
I like the wheelie.
Oh.
You still like to carry?
No. I am a wheelie guy. But back in let's say the 90s when we were traveling for business, it was one of my things of, you carry a businessman carries his bag. Now listen how I said that. A businessman, the gender issue, yeah. Right? Carries his bag. So I think she's right, and she looks at a couple other things that are gender-based in the sense that they cause things to not be adopted quite easily. For example, they look at the electric car, which actually came into existence a long time ago, but they thought that was a very feminine technology. The electric starter for automobiles, that was viewed as something they didn't want to use because it took a man to go crank. Remember the crank at the front of the car?
Right.
So they claim she thinks, and I think I would agree with her, the electric starter was delayed because a guy's got to start that car with a hand crank. So there you go.
So it's too soft. That's interesting. I guess you don't think about that stuff, but.
No, I didn't. And I didn't think of it in the context of how she was bringing it up, which is men do certain things and there's or things are going to be feminized a certain way. So we have a little tiny bit here before we go to our first break. And we wanted to look at something that obviously a lot of people know about, which is that Carl Nassib came out as gay, NFL player. It was received very well, although a lot of critics, especially sports critics, took the NFL to task for this, aka many high-profile NFL players had nothing but crickets on their Twitter feeds when this happened. No one retweeted it per se, not like a Tom Brady. A lot of critics also took the NFL management to task for this because they jumped all over it. Like, look how great and inclusive we are, but there's still players who do things that are, sort of wanted to be swept under the rug, or it's something about, you know what I'm getting at. It's some bad behavior. Right. So I applaud him coming out. I think it was an incredible step for someone, especially a pro athlete in the league. And I was just interested that the reactions to it ricocheted around the internet in a way I was not suspecting. As in, no one attacked him. They all attacked the institutions that supported it, I suppose, or didn't, right?
Yeah, no, I was pleasantly surprised as you were, and they said his jersey now is the number one selling NFL jersey.
Good to hear.
And yeah, but I was pleasantly surprised as you were that I thought the acceptance and the lack of, now maybe it's the media you and I read or you and I consume or listen to, but there didn't appear to be a lot of the negative comments or commentary that you would expect you would hear even a couple of years ago.
Agreed. Right? Yeah.
You remember when Michael Sam or a few of these other athletes had come out, how there was still the crazies that were against it, and so I thought it was a good thing, and he handled it well. I thought he
beautifully,
gave in giving the donation to the Trevor Project, and then the NFL matched the donation. And then I believe some other teams also had stepped up to in support of him. So I thought it was well done. He didn't make I don't think he made a huge fanfare about it,
which I think was great. Actually, it's like, this is who I am. I struggled with it. I'm proud to be out, and I'm glad to be working with a great team and being a productive teammate.
Yeah, and he comes from also a very accepting and loving family too, which I think is important.
Big difference, yeah.
Good thing for him, and congratulations. Hey, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we've got some shop talk about some safe cities to live in, or cities that appear to be the safest for LGBTQ people, and our business birthday, of course. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
You're listening to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com. Now back to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Available pretty much everywhere.
Okay, welcome back. John Nash here with Tim Bennett. It's The Focus Group. Focusgroupradio.com is our URL. And if you want to drop us a comment or a suggestion, letters at focusgroupradio.com. After our business birthday, which we'll have in a moment, we have an interesting article about the safest states in the union to live if you are LGBTQ+. As you ponder that, I bet you could put the list together in your head and be sort of correct. At least that's the way I read the list. So, without further ado, business birthday.
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings, but the Focus Group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
So happy 67th birthday today to the richest woman in the Netherlands. I don't know if that's like being the tallest building in Scranton, but it's the...
I like that one, Tim. That's a good one.
Is that a shot?
Yeah.
She's the richest person in the Netherlands with a net worth of $16.3 billion, according to the Forbes billionaires list. It's Charlene de Carvalho Heineken. I'm just going to call her Ms. Heineken, of course.
Wait,
Heineken.
Charlene de Carvalho Heineken.
Yeah.
Carvalho. Yeah.
Now that kind of Carvalho almost looks to me, as the spelling looks to be Brazilian.
Carvalho.
Although I'm guessing it's Dutch.
Okay. Yeah.
don't you think?
I would guess, yeah.
Yeah, she's a Dutch Brit, although the mother was an American. So anyway, she's born June 30th, 1954. She's 67 today. She's a businesswoman and the owner of a 25% controlling interest in the world's largest brewer, Heineken. She was the only child of Freddie Heineken, who was a Dutch industrialist, and Lucille Cummins, an American from Kentucky, of a family and bourbon distillery. And I believe they sold their bourbon fortune to Seagram's. Her father, Freddie Heineken, he'd come from the Netherlands, and he was delivering beer before Heineken took off in North America and met the mother, and then, of course, all things took off. And the Heineken Prize, which is a biannual prize for cognitive science, which I think is an odd thing that they give, is named after the mother. When her father died in 2002, Freddie Heineken, Charlene inherited the $4.8 billion fortune and a 50% controlling interest in the beer business. And as we mentioned, it was at the time the third largest beer manufacturer in the world. They manufacture more than 250 different kinds of beer, and they operate in 170 different countries. And revenues of $26 billion.
Wow.
Which is crazy. Her father Freddie was very flamboyant. They said a very flamboyant character, a jet setter. He owned a yacht named Something Cool. The daughter, however, lives a very private life with her husband and 5 children. They spend a lot of time in London, not Amsterdam. After college, she interned at Heineken. She never really showed interest in, joining the business. Why would you? You're collecting coin. Since her father's death, she's sat on the board and management, and she's on a number of supervisory boards at the same time. And they said that they created this investment holding company. Her father created it to ensure the independence of the brewery and put her on it as one of the members to safeguard any takeover attempts, and then created some foundations. They said that she had met her husband. Charlene had met her husband, who was a financier at Citigroup, when she was on a ski holiday in Switzerland, to St. Moritz. Her father was kidnapped along with his driver. It's a little bit of trivia here. And was released after the family paid a $16 million euro ransom fee.
When was this? What year was this?
To kidnappers. It doesn't say the year. It just says that father was once kidnapped along with the driver. He was released only after the family paid a ransom of 16 million euros to the kidnappers. And
something tells me we're talking like late 90s, maybe early 2000s. Because if she's 67 and the father might be still alive, but
the father died 2002.
Oh, okay. So that was definitely the 80s or 90s.
Yeah. Now a lot of these people, Exxon, even people we know are friends of ours, that if you have a senior level at a large corporation, you go to some of these places, you travel with guards. You're almost like the president when you travel. I have a couple of friends in the oil business, and they go to South America. It's
they
like
got
they're
guards.
traveling with
Isn't
the
that
president.
Weird? It's so weird. It's the time we live in, right?
Yeah. Heineken was founded in 1864. They own 165 different breweries. They own a number of brands. I didn't realize this. They are now, since the merger with Anheuser-Busch and SAB Miller, Heineken is now the second largest brewer in the world. But they own Amstel Light. They own Red Stripe. They own a bunch of Asian brands. I was trying to look up all of them.
They own Red Stripe? Red Stripe always associate with the Caribbean. That's it. I think.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. They own brands all over the world. They own Dos Equis, Sol, Tecate, and Mexico. And I remember Heineken was a big deal when we were in college. When I was a Teamster, I
briefly,
worked at Baskin Robbins.
Briefly, yeah.
And making $17 an hour. Now this is the 80s, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I had a lot of money, so I would drink Heineken in college. I thought it was a big thing. Now I kind of do you drink beer at all?
Not
anymore?
A big beer fan, and when I do, it's usually like a craft beer, and I like the lighter the lighter wheat
the light
beer.
beers.
Yeah.
So they got so other than that, as we said, it's a big company. They've gotten a little bit of trouble in Europe because they control so much of the market. There was the European Commission got upset because they thought they were price fixing in all the hotels and distribution, and they got through that. Then they also got caught for doing a fake craft beer. Speaking of craft beers, in Ireland they had briefly marketed something called Blasket Blonde. and they pretended it came from some made-up craft beer, some invented brewery, but it really just came from one of the big brew houses, and they tried to make it sound like it was a craft beer, which it really wasn't.
I wonder how they got caught.
Well, I think somebody tried to find out, well, like, where is this thing being made, right?
Yeah.
And they found out it, was being pumped out by one of the big brewers, and it really wasn't a craft beer. So happy birthday, Charlene. She's collecting her coin in London.
She's in London. Okay.
Yeah,
collecting her
most
coin
of
in
the time.
London.
What would you do with all that money, John?
I would do exactly what you and I have talked about the last couple of days. You often said if you had that kind of money, why wouldn't you just take your friends on a fantastic trip?
Every day.
I would volunteer. I would contribute to organizations. I would put aside enough to make sure we could get by and get through some bad times. But nobody really needs that much money, right? I mean, it's kind of like why Warren Buffett's giving away the vast amount of his fortune, which is pretty vast, but it's crazy. But you know what? Out of all these conversations about what would I do with, I would like to be in the position to make that decision. So the real question is, wouldn't you love to be in the position to make the decision to what to do with all that money?
Would you do anything extravagant?
The one extravagant thing I would do, and I would probably love this to death, I would like to cycle the Dolomites, in the Italian Alps, that area. There's some incredible roads that the Tour de France or the Tour d'Italia goes on. And it would be really great if I had one or two cycling buddies, which I do, and I could say, guys, if you could take a week off, I'm going to take care of getting us a guide, and I'll take care of our little accommodations along the way. That would be the extravagance that I would do. It would be like a cycling trip, which doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be spending millions of dollars. Thousands, yes.
I think you could do more than a week.
Well,
I don't think you need to rush it.
Okay, I like your thinking. And
that's the thing.
Well,
I thought you might say you'd open the John Nash School of Design somewhere, at something.
Actually, you do bring up some interesting thoughts there. That's but the first thing would be on my bucket list as I'm getting older would be to get some of these rides that I've always wanted to do. They have something called the Étape de Tour, which is kind of like the Tour de France, but you follow where the route goes, or you do it before or after the tour goes through. I just think it'd be kind of cool I don't think you could do the whole thing, and they don't do the whole thing because these riders, the riders in the Tour de France are some of the top athletes of the world. You can't be on a bike for 3 weeks and thousands of miles and not be a top athlete.
Well, that's why you do steroids. Did you see that Yahoo that had the sign this weekend?
Oh, Tim.
Knocked the racers. I couldn't believe that.
My sister sent me a note and she said, I know you love the Tour de France. I had not watched the opening because I was off by a day. And when I tuned in, I saw just the one camera angle where he hits the cardboard and then you see like a bunch of bowling pins right behind him. Everybody, bikes flipping up in the air. Some guy... Well, a number of people withdrew from injuries, multiple fractures, road rash. They're looking for her now. They want to press charges. And the tour wants to sue her. You heard about this, right?
No, I didn't know. I thought it was a male. It was a woman.
It was a woman, and it said on the sign she had said, "Allez, go, 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 grandma, grandpa," or something like that, because she was doing it for the cameras. Well, now Reuters reported this morning that the fan is still at large. She's going to be at large for a while if she knows what she did. All right, earlier we teased this article that I'm going to call up here, and Tim found this, and I really like it a lot, and it's LGBTQ State Safety Rankings for 2021. We've looked at this kind of thing before, once we did it with retirement. Let's call this up. And they rank the safety of states using a couple different criteria: adoption laws, hate crimes issues, what's on the books, what's not. And we could go through the key takeaways, or we could just start looking at some of the states that are at top and the ones that are not at the top, and why. How do you want to tackle it, Tim?
Well, you can decide, because I was wondering what your initial thought was over the overall list, and then you can go through the, as you want to go through. But what was your overall thought of the list?
my impression of my overall impression is fairly accurate. Some states to me were a head scratcher as to why they fell in the rankings where they did, because I know a lot of people who live in them and have no problem. But again, the criteria looked at hate crimes laws, adoption policies, equality issues at work. The top ranked states, by the way, tied for number 1, California and Vermont. Coming in at number 3 is the state of Maryland. Coming in at number 4 is Washington State, 5 Illinois, and that's also a tie with Oregon. 7 is Massachusetts, 8 is New York, 9 Rhode Island, and 10 Colorado. Now, our home state of Connecticut ranks as 13th, but I kind of thought Connecticut should have been higher up there. So what were your takeaways from, or do you want to look at the worst states?
We'll get to the worst, which, I was a little surprised by a couple of the worst, but the top 10, I was a little surprised. I shouldn't say I was surprised. I was surprised Connecticut wasn't further up. And I don't know I guess I don't know what knocked Connecticut out. Did they say what knocked Connecticut out of the top 10?
They didn't even talk about it because they only talked about the ones that were ranked and the lowest and the highest. So Connecticut was up. But Connecticut surprised me. It did surprise me. Well, yeah, it did surprise me.
Yeah, I was surprised about Connecticut. And then, although I know Iowa has been, Iowa was ahead of Connecticut, as was Minnesota. Both of those states and Colorado have done well with equality. But the New England states in general, Maine was number 13 and tied with Connecticut. But all of the New England states, New Hampshire was 21, Delaware, where I am, 19. New Jersey was 16. I was surprised at New Jersey as well.
That also stuck out at me as being unusual, given its proximity to New York and Connecticut.
Right.
The tri-state. It just kind of rang unusual.
Pennsylvania, I wasn't surprised about at 22. I thought it would be actually lower. Pennsylvania is an outlier in the Northeast. It's probably the most screwed up state in the Northeast in terms of LGBT rights, and in the legislature in Pennsylvania is just it should be based somewhere down south, at least the middle of the state.
I just remember
Pennsylvania.
A couple of years ago, Tim, we did a road trip with VW, the all-track wagon. It was the Get Your Scoops or Know Your Scoops, and it was a tour of Pennsylvania dairies, and we also sampled vanilla at each one. And I remember we were leaving the perimeter of Philadelphia, and Brian was with us, Brian Roman from AdMark 360, and the two of you just started laughing. You're like, okay, we're on our way to Pennsylvania. I mean, you guys knew
Buckle
that.
Up.
Yeah, there was the Philadelphia metropolitan area, and then there was the Pittsburgh area, and everything in between was sort of like a different state, right?
Yeah, it's what James Carville used to say. Pennsylvania, you got Pittsburgh and Philadelphia with Alabama in the middle. And it's not far off. So I thought they might be further down because further down was Wisconsin and a few other states that you thought might be
further up,
a little lightened. Yeah. And then the worst states now. So going from, and because they include DC in here, right? That's why there's 51 listed. So from where would you go from 40? Do you want to go from 40 to 51? I guess you'd have to start at 37. So
there's a couple of ties. So if we start at number 37, it's a tie. It's a four-way tie between Michigan, Missouri, Nebraska, and Ohio. Five-way tie in South Carolina. Those are all holding the 37th spot. Oh, I'm sorry, six-way tie, Tennessee as well. Okay. Then we go down to Wyoming, and we're going down in the order of the worst. Next worst.
Wyoming, the equality state, by the way. That's their tagline. Thank you.
Isn't that so typical? Alabama is next, followed by Kentucky. 45th down, which is a three-way tie with 40. The three-way tie is Kentucky, Mississippi, Montana. I was surprised by Montana. 48 is Georgia, 49 is Kansas, 50 is South Dakota, and because, as Tim mentioned, they included the District of Columbia, 51 is North Dakota. I wasn't surprised by the Dakotas, nor was I surprised by Kansas. I was a little bit surprised by Georgia. I know that Georgia has been a focus for a number of reasons, but I thought with Atlanta and Savannah and a couple other interesting metropolitan areas and cultural areas that it would be a little higher up. But based on how they did this, right, the states just didn't rank that high.
Yeah, no, I was surprised. I guess I shouldn't be surprised by the Dakotas, but so they said South Dakota produced low scores in nearly every category, failing to implement significant protections against discrimination of LGBTQ individuals in school settings, employment, healthcare, and public accommodation, and also hate crimes. So they did not do well, and the same with North Dakota. They had South Dakota's negative score was 67, North Dakota's was 78 to be the worst in the country in terms of safety for LGBTQ people. They have such low populations. I guess maybe that's why I don't think of them. I mean, there was at one point they were talking about taking both states and just calling it Dakota and getting rid of North and South, but the Republicans don't want to do that because then they'd probably lose 2 senators.
And then North Dakota experienced cities like Fargo and a few others experienced enormous population booms several years ago when they started doing the taking the tar sands. You know that oil's getting a little bit hard to find when you have to scrape up sand and extract the tar and the oil from it. But it brought a lot of workers in, and a lot of influx of individuals to these towns. North Dakota, I was just so not surprised by it being, I don't mean to be insulting, but it wasn't a surprise that it's the lowest one. And I think you kind of zeroed in on one of these statistical anomalies, which is when you have a smaller population by general spread of the state and the geography, anything that happens there is going to look different from a statistical point of view because you're not measuring it against millions, right? Like 70 million or whatever, or how many millions of people. You're measuring it against hundreds of thousands. So the numbers, I wonder if they take that into account and they change their math, or they have a formula that kind of helps them re-skew it, do you think?
Well, probably not though, because California and Vermont were both tied for number one, and so Vermont's got a very small population, and California's got the largest, right?
Yeah.
So both California and Vermont scored the highest for safety and equality. Both states have taken numerous legislative measures to support LGBTQ residents in recent years, and then they go through what the states have done. And I was going to see if they had any negative. So California performed slightly poorer than the national average in terms of directed hate crimes, but generally in every other measure they're way above.
Especially workplace equality, marriage and family, children, crime. One of the conclusions of the report was that states with higher concentrations of LGBTQ plus residents perform better in their ranking, with the exception of Georgia. And that's why Georgia was curious to me, because Georgia came in at 48, but they do have a high population, a high percentage of their population is LGBTQ plus. However, in terms of hate crimes against the community, these high-performing states collectively average 19.9 hate crimes per 100,000 residents, far above the national average of 10 per 100,000. So here again, you have this anomaly of when you have a higher population, you may actually see a statistic like a higher number of hate crimes simply because there's more people.
Right. These surveys are done quite often, and they look at when they look at these. The state of LGBTQ people and safety and acceptance and so forth. And generally, and this will be a wide, brush. I mean, we've always said generally, and in some of these states that get dinged, obviously, if you were probably in Atlanta and Georgia, it's probably obviously a much better environment for you if you're in Georgia than it would be if you were in maybe a very rural area. And same with the Dakotas or in Kentucky or some of the other states that maybe didn't fare as well, right? And a lot of these urban areas or in the more populated areas, you're probably more likely to find more acceptance or to be in a safer environment. Now, legally, you may have issues because these states do not have laws in the books.
Yeah, correct.
But I think in terms of acceptance, because sometimes we often say, why would you stay in an area where you're not welcome?
Oh, no, completely. And at the bottom of this thing, they have the scoring rubric, and that's the data points they use to score this. And it's not like they went out and did a survey. They looked at existing data they pulled in from all different sources, and it had the criteria of, does state law expressly protect employees of the state and local government from discrimination? Does the state offer any other type of relationship recognition for same-sex couples? Well, now, you could have a same-sex partnership. Of course, we have marriage. Is there a state anti-discrimination law that applies or may apply to schools? And finally, does the state explicitly ban transgender exclusion in health insurance? So when you have a matrix like this, if you get a no on any one of these, it's going to change the ranking. So it's a little binary. And as Tim just pointed out, if you live in one of these cities or states, it may not be your experience. But it's an interesting look, I think, at the whole thing.
Yeah. I think it's good to look at these rankings, and this one I think in particular we'll post it to our site, which is Focus Group Radio on our Facebook page, because there's a lot of information here to digest, and you're going to want to see where your state obviously falls in, and the other information that they provide about it. But I think it's an important thing to look at. I know here in the town that I'm in currently, in Rehoboth, the HRC had put out a ranking recently. And there were a couple of areas where people thought the town was really doing well in, and the HRC had dinged them on. And the leaders of the city are actually taking it quite seriously to figure out
how do we improve? Yeah.
How do we improve, or how did we fall down on this, or how did we not see this, or what areas can we do to improve? So I think it's important as a report card for people to take a look at and at least see where you stand. In some regards, or in some ways, it obviously is legislatures and who's in charge, and that's why elections matter, right?
Completely.
I know that's a big deal in Pennsylvania.
Well, a number of the rubrics or the data points they looked at had definitely, could you draw back to legislation in the state? Are you protected? Is there a law that says you can do this, this, this? And it does go to state legislatures, which are Republican or Democratic. There's just no way around it.
Yeah. Hey, are you doing anything for the 4th of July, Mr. Nash?
We're going to be upstate, and we're deciding on whether to do, we want to see who's going to be around, and maybe we'll do like a casual picnic or something. Yeah.
Does Bob have his little fireworks display?
No, we did not get to go to New Hampshire to get his, and I wish we did, because I really do love watching them. I do love fireworks, but I'm also scared crapless when they're in your backyard. Our neighbors are planning a display. We heard them testing stuff, and I
was going to say, your neighbors usually do one, don't they?
They do a darn good. They go all out. They spend like $300 on the big cubes.
How did you guys go to New Hampshire? Would you just shoot up?
Bob did a day trip. He was so scared on the way back he was going to be pulled over by a trooper, thinking that he just crossed the state line with fireworks. Yeah,
I got the goods. Like Breaking Bad, Bob. Breaking Bad. Yeah. Hey, thanks for joining us today. We hope you all have a happy and safe 4th of July, Independence Day. Be sure to head over to focusgroupradio.com and find all of our media there, both audio and video, and catch up on our programming. Again, have a great week, and we'll see you on our podcast Unbuttoned on Tuesday. Take care.
It's The Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.
That was a stunning focus group.